Welcome back to the deep dive. I want you to just picture a scene for a second.
Okay.
It's 1968. You are in Elmira, New York. It's a Wednesday night. The air in the room is probably just thick with cigarette smoke. And you are sitting in a living room waiting for a ghost to talk physics.
That is, that is certainly a mood setter, but Ghost might be a little reductive for what we are actually dealing with today,
Yeah, fair enough.
because we are dealing with a consciousness that has never been physically focused,
Hmm.
which is a totally different category altogether.
Okay, fair point. Let's go with non-physical energy personality essence. Is that better?
Much better. It captures the actual nuance of it.
So today we are looking at a specific document that, and I'll be completely honest with you, kind of freaked me out. We are jumping into session 410 of the Seth Material.
Hmm.
Specifically, this is from the early sessions, book 8. And the date of record is May 8, 1968. And usually, when we cover these sources, it's all about personal growth or the whole you create your own reality concept, that sort of empowering stuff. But this one, this is very different.
It is distinct. It's highly technical. It's prophetic in a lot of ways. And frankly, it is one of the absolute strangest sessions in the entire archive because the voice itself changes. We aren't just hearing from Seth today.
No, we are not. And it's weirdly specific, too. We have a prediction in here that gives us a literal timeline for when humanity will scientifically prove the existence of the soul. And spoiler alert, looking at the calendar right now, we are sweating. We are right in the window.
We really are. The timeline given in this session points directly to the late 2020s, specifically right around 2028.
So 2028, the year physics, not religion, not psychology, but physics supposedly finds the soul. We're going to unpack all of that. But before we get to the high-level metaphysical architecture of the universe, we actually have to talk about something much more grounded.
You mean the beer incident?
I absolutely mean the beer incident. Because this session, session 410, happened on May 8th, 1968. But it was supposed to happen on May 6th. And the reason it didn't is, honestly, it's the most relatable thing I have ever read in a channeled text.
It really humanizes the whole process, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We tend to think of these mediums, Jane Roberts in this specific case, as these ascetic, monk-like figures sitting in total silence on a mountaintop somewhere.
Right, burning sage and fasting.
Exactly. But Jane was a writer. She was a smoker. She liked to drink. She was just a person living a very normal, slightly bohemian life while doing this totally extraordinary thing.
So here is the setup for you. It's Monday, May 6th. Jane Roberts goes to the mailbox. And inside, there is a letter from Prentice-Hall. Now, for those who don't know, in 1968, Prentice-Hall was an absolute titan in the publishing world.
Huge. And getting a letter from them outlining plans to publish the Seth Material, that is the we made it moment. That is the career-defining break for any author.
Sure.
Up until this point, this was basically a private living room experiment. Now it's about to go global.
Exactly. So the adrenaline is just pumping. Jane and her husband, Rob, who Seth refers to as Joseph, in the notes, they are over the moon, they have supper, they are celebrating, and Jane decides, I'm going to have a couple of beers.
Which is a perfectly reasonable response to landing a major publishing deal.
Totally. But the notes are very specific here. Rob records that she drank 2.5 quick beers. Now, I don't know about you, but 2.5 quick beers on an empty stomach after supper, that's a buzz. That is a definitive physiological shift.
It is, and this is exactly where we get a fascinating insight into the raw mechanics of how this energy transfer actually works, because they try to hold the session that night anyway. They sit down, they turn on the lights, get the pen and paper ready, and...
Crickets. Absolutely nothing. Jane just can't get the signal. But, and this is why I love the source material so much, she doesn't just pass out or give up. She gets a message, a sort of mental sticky note from Seth. And I have to read this because hearing a multidimensional entity complain about a buzz is just comedy gold.
Please do. It's a classic Seth moment.
Okay, so Seth sends this impression through and it says, you don't have to worry about me drinking too much. I'm sick now from drinking what I did. Be comforting and put me to bed. I can't hold liquor.
I can't hold liquor. That is brilliant.
And then he adds, the problem will never arise. I drank too much and I can't let Seth speak in his own voice.
Now, let's just pause on that for a second, because that is funny, yes. The idea of a spirit getting a hangover by proxy is hilarious.
Yeah.
But looking at it through the lens of the material, it's actually a really crucial data point about what channeling fundamentally is.
How so?
Well, it implies that the channel isn't just a passive radio receiver like an antenna on a roof. It's a biological partnership.
Yeah.
So this energy essence is literally merging with Jane's central nervous system. So if Jane's nervous system is chemically depressed by alcohol...
The signal is totally distorted.
Exactly. He says, I can't let Seth speak. It implies that the Seth personality itself is a construct that requires fine motor control, fine neural alignment from Jane. If the biological instrument is sloppy, the construct just collapses. He's essentially saying, the equipment is too fuzzy for me to render the interface properly.
That's wild. It's like trying to run high-end video editing software on a laptop that's overheating and has way too many tabs open. The software just refuses to launch.
Precisely. It strips away all the dusty mysticism and makes it almost mechanical. It's a matter of frequency and biological capability. If the chemical balance isn't right, the connection just flat out fails.
So Seth gets a rain check. Fast forward 48 hours. It's now Wednesday, May 8th. Jane has completely recovered from her wild night of 2.5 beers. But the vibe in the room, the notes say it's tense.
There's a lot of anticipation. Jane mentions she's been adjusting to a new method. She's been feeling it all day long. She's missing the old Seth voice, the one she's used to. She feels like something much larger is looming. She knows she's about to go deeper than she usually goes.
And this is where we need to try and visualize what Jane is seeing in her mind's eye. Because she describes a very specific image to explain what's happening to her consciousness at that moment. She calls it the cone effect.
Right, and this is a very rare glimpse under the hood of the channeling hierarchy. Usually we just hear Seth, and we just assume Seth is the ultimate source. But here, Jane describes a distinct visual structure, a cone.
Okay, walk me through this structure.
Picture a standard cone shape. At the very wide base, the bottom of the cone, you have Jane and Robert. They are the foundation. They are rooted in physical reality. They are the anchors.
Okay, so they're the base. Got it.
Moving up the cone, in the middle section, you have Seth, the personality they know and love, the witty, teacher-like figure we just heard joking about beer.
Right, the middle management, the friendly, approachable face of the corporation.
In a way, yes, he is the translator. But at the very peak, the tiny tip of the cone at the top is what Jane calls Seth's entity.
Seth's entity. So Seth actually has a boss, or like a higher self.
Think of it as the source. Seth describes himself often as a fragment or a personality focus of a much larger identity. In this session, session 410, the Seth personality is essentially stepping aside. He's opening the gate so the raw energy from the top of the cone can come straight down to the bottom, completely bypassing the middleman.
And Jane feels this shift immediately. She says the voice changes. It's not the booming, deep, boisterous voice anymore. It's described as high-pitched, distant, relatively emotionless.
Pure information. That's the key phrase here. Seth is the interface. He adds warmth, humor, idioms. He makes the data palatable for human beings. The entity at the top of the cone is just raw, unfiltered data. It's colder because it's further removed from the human experience. It doesn't care about feelings in the same way. It cares about the pure structure of reality.
It's like talking to the CEO instead of the customer service rep. The rep asks how your day is going because they are specifically trained to be nice. The CEO just sits down, reads the quarterly projections, and tells you the core company strategy.
And the CEO, in this case, does not waste any time with pleasantries. The entity clears its throat, metaphorically speaking, and immediately drops a heavy concept. It starts talking about coordinates.
Coordinates. Now, when I hear coordinates, my brain goes straight to GPS. Latitude, longitude, maps. But that's not what we're talking about here, is it?
No, not at all. Let me read the exact quote. The entity states, "These coordinates form all realities. They are unique points through which vitality expresses itself."
Vitality expresses itself. I mean, that sounds poetic, but let's really break that down for you listening. What is vitality in this specific context?
Energy, consciousness, the raw stuff of the universe. I want you to think of the universe not as a collection of physical planets and stars, but as an infinite grid of energy potential. The entity is saying that what we call matter, this table we're sitting at, your microphone, my hand, is just what happens when that energy hits a specific intersection point on that grid.
Okay, so the matter isn't the real thing. The matter is just the symptom of the energy hitting that specific spot.
Exactly. It's like a pixel on a television screen. The pixel lights up because electricity hits it. The pixel isn't the source of the image, the electricity and the signal are. And this leads directly to a term that is absolutely central to Seth's entire philosophy: camouflage.
Camouflage. Yes, he uses this word a lot in the books. Physical reality is camouflage.
He does. And if we put this in a bulleted list to really break down the entity's logic, the first point is that camouflages spring up along the coordinates. It's saying that physical reality is a disguise. We think the body is the person. We think the tree is the wood. But really, the physical form is just a costume that the energy wears when it occupies this specific coordinate in space and time.
Just the suit.
It's the suit. And the entity takes it a massive step further. It says, the inner fabric of reality is far more complicated than outer camouflage as you know it.
Which is a very polite cosmic way of saying, you guys have absolutely no idea what's actually going on. We are like kids playing dress up, convinced the costumes are real life.
We are staring at the costume and entirely ignoring the actor inside. And because we are so totally obsessed with the costume, the physical world, we miss the fact that we actually exist in other places simultaneously.
And this is the part of the deep dive that broke my brain a little bit. Simultaneity. The entity says we operate on all levels of reality right now, not after we die, not before we're born, right now.
Yes. It claims that if you knew the coordinates, if you knew how to tune the radio dial of your own consciousness, you could perceive your other existences that are happening concurrently with this one.
It's basically the ultimate FOMO. I'm sitting here doing a deep dive into this material, but apparently another version of me or a part of my greater entity is doing something completely different in another dimension, and I'm just totally ignoring it.
You are focused. That's the word Seth would use. You are intensely focused on this specific coordinate. It's like watching a movie so intently that you forget you're sitting in a theater. The entity is saying the theater is real. The movie's just a camouflage. The trick is to realize you can stand up, walk out of the theater, and walk into another one.
But how? That's always the big question with this stuff. How do we prove this isn't just a really nice metaphor? Because usually when you hear stuff like this, it's very vague, it's spiritual, it's, woo-woo. But the entity pivots here and makes a prediction that is surprisingly grounded in hard science.
This is the race for the soul.
Right. The entity talks about the future discovery of the multidimensional nature of personality, basically proving scientifically that the soul or this multidimensional self is a real thing. Now, if you were betting on this, you would think psychology would win this race. They study the mind. They study the self.
That would be the logical bet. Freud, Jung, the whole history of psychology is about trying to map the self. You'd completely expect the breakthrough to come from understanding the subconscious mind.
But the entity says, nope. Psychology is going to lose.
It says, and this is a direct quote, it is very possible that physics, rather than psychology, will give the first hint that human personality is multidimensional.
Physics, the math geeks, the people studying quarks and black holes, they are going to be the ones to find the soul first.
And the reasoning the entity gives is fascinating. It argues that psychology is too trapped in the closed system of the brain. They are looking for the mind inside the biological tissue.
Which, going back to our radio analogy, is like taking apart a plastic radio to find the little man singing inside.
That is a perfect analogy. You can dissect the speakers, you can analyze the wiring, you can map the circuits all day long, but you will never find the singer in there because the signal is coming from outside the box. Psychology is obsessed with the box.
And physics.
Physics deals with energy. Physics deals with fields. The entity predicts that physicists will eventually run into a math problem they simply can't solve. They will find that the energy within a molecular structure just doesn't add up.
They'll have leftover numbers, the math won't balance.
They will realize that the energy has to be coming from somewhere else. The entity says scientists will be forced to recognize that the energy within molecular structures has its origin elsewhere.
Forced to recognize. I just love that phrasing. Like, they don't want to admit it. They want a neat material universe where everything makes sense on a chalkboard, but the math is going to drag them kicking and screaming into spirituality.
And this brings us right back to the timeline, because you mentioned earlier that we are sweating.
Yeah. The date. This session is recorded in May 1968. The entity says this discovery, the scientific bridge between physics and the soul, will happen within perhaps a 60-year period.
1968 plus 60 years.
2028.
We are sitting just a few years away from that deadline.
And if you look at what's actually happening in physics right now with quantum entanglement, with the simulation hypothesis gaining traction, with the observer effect, it really feels like we are inching right up to that line.
We are certainly seeing a massive breakdown of the strict materialist view. The idea that the universe is just dead matter bumping into other dead matter is becoming incredibly hard to defend mathematically. We are realizing that information or consciousness might actually be fundamental. The entity even mentions specifically that this breakthrough will come from an attempt to explain Einstein's field theory.
So the entity might be entirely right. We might literally be 3 or 4 years away from a headline in Scientific American that says, "Oops, we found the afterlife."
I highly doubt the headline will be that sensational, but the core implication will be there. The closed system of the physical universe is about to be blown wide open.
Now, the entity does throw a bit of a bone to psychology. It says, look, you guys could catch up, but you'd have to get a little experimental.
You mean the drugs?
I mean the drugs. This section is wild because it's not just a generic drugs are bad or drugs are good conversation. It's a literal pharmacology lesson from a ghost.
It is. And it's incredibly specific. The entity describes two specific plant-based compounds that could help psychologists breach that barrier and finally see the coordinates we talked about earlier.
Let's break these down for you. The first one it mentions is from Africa.
Yes, it's described as resembling a cotton plant, with small yellow or yellow-white seeds. The entity says its effects are highly hallucinatory.
But not in a seeing pink elephants kind of way.
No, the distinction here is crucial. The entity calls them valid journeys into other realities.
Which implies that what we write off as a hallucination might just be the brain tuning into a different channel on that dial. Like if I see a dragon in my living room on this stuff, the dragon might actually be there, just existing on a different coordinate.
Or you are perceiving an energy form that your human brain translates as a dragon because that's the closest symbol it has. The point is, it's not a malfunction of the brain. It's an expansion of its range. The brain stops filtering out the other reality and finally lets it in.
Okay, so that's the African plant, but the second one, the Mexican one, this is where the story gets genuinely spooky. Not because of the drug itself, but because of the context of the session.
This is the Sinaquichi connection.
Shinaquichi, that's the specific name of the plant.
Correct. The entity describes a plant from Mexico. It lists the effects very clearly. It causes giddiness, optical illusions where objects appear to shrink in size, and this is the big one, a feeling of remembering events from before one's birth.
Pre-birth memories. That's incredibly heavy. But here is the real Twilight Zone moment of this deep dive. Remember, Jane and Rob are in Elmira, New York. They get the New York Times delivered, but they always get it a day late because of the mail delivery schedule back then.
Right. So on May 8th, the actual day of this session, they have not seen that day's paper.
But the notes reveal that on that exact day, May 8th, 1968, the New York Times published an article by Walter Sullivan. And guess what it was about?
It was a deep dive into alkaloid families and hallucinogens, and it specifically discusses Sinaquichi.
The same obscure Mexican plant.
Yeah.
On the exact same day.
And the article describes the exact same symptoms. Giddiness, objects appearing to shrink, and the recovery of pre-birth memories or ancestral memories.
Come on. That is the literal definition of a synchronicity. Jane is sitting in a trance, channeling a high-frequency entity, describing a specific obscure plant and its highly specific effects at the exact moment an article is being circulated about it in New York that she hasn't even read yet.
It functions as a validation mechanism. It's almost as if the entity is purposefully saying, I'm not just pulling this from Jane's subconscious. I have access to outside data.
It feels like the entity is showing off a little bit, like, oh, you want proof I'm real? Go check the newspaper you haven't read yet.
Or it suggests that the information was literally in the air.
Mm-hmm.
If we go back to the idea of coordinates and molecular consciousness, maybe the publication of that article created a ripple in the collective consciousness that the entity easily tapped into.
I read it on the psychic internet.
Essentially, yes. It powerfully underscores the main point of this entire session. The universe is not a closed room. Information flows in from outside. Energy flows in from outside.
Speaking of how we view the universe, this leads us to what I think is the most powerful metaphor in this entire session, the photograph analogy.
Oh, man. This part. If you take one thing away from this deep dive today, it should be this image. It completely changes how you look at yourself.
It really does. So the entity says, and quoting directly here, the physical universe is like a very poor photograph.
A poor photograph.
Yeah.
We think what we are seeing, touching, tasting right now is 4K, high-definition reality.
Yeah.
We think this is the main event.
But think about a photo of someone you love, a static two-dimensional image. It captures a likeness. It captures a moment of light hitting a lens. But does it capture their voice, their actual thoughts, the heat of their skin, their dreams?
No, it's flat. It's essentially dead. It's just a symbol.
The entity is saying that our physical life is just that snapshot. It is a dim, incomplete symbol of the massive reality it represents.
So you are not you. You're a photograph of you.
I am the 2D representation of a multidimensional being. The entity warns, you would learn little of what it means subjectively to be a human being by simply studying a picture of one.
And yet, that's exactly what modern science is doing. They are studying the ink, they are analyzing the chemical makeup of the photo paper, and they are throwing their hands up and saying, well, we've analyzed the chemical composition of the photo paper, and we can't find any evidence of a personality in the ink. Therefore, it doesn't exist.
Exactly. And they never will find it there because the personality isn't in the picture. The picture is a projection of the personality. The personality is standing completely outside the frame.
This directly touches on the concept of identity. We identify so strongly with the ego, the person trapped in the photo. We think, I am this body, I am this job, I am this name. But the entity says true identity is as much divorced from ego reality as the photograph is from the person.
Which is honestly, that's oddly comforting to me.
Why do you say that?
Because if I'm having a terrible day, if I'm stressed about taxes, or my back hurts, or I'm just feeling stuck in my life, that's just the poor photograph. That's just a smudge on the film. The real me is the thing casting the shadow. The real me is somewhere else, presumably doing just fine.
It creates a very healthy psychological distance. It allows you to observe the struggles of your life without being entirely consumed by them.
And here is the philosophical twist that the entity throws in right after that. The person must recognize the image in the photograph, or it will not recognize him.
Whoa. Say that again. That's profound.
The photo doesn't know the person. The ego doesn't know the soul. But the soul knows the ego.
So I'm walking around thinking I'm the main character of reality, totally oblivious to the fact that I'm essentially just a selfie that my soul took.
That is a very 2024 way of putting it, but yes. You are the selfie. The entity is trying to get you to turn around and look at the camera for once.
It's the ultimate dissociation from the day-to-day drama of life. If you realize you are the entity, not the photo, the problems of the photo just seem so much smaller.
So the entity delivers this incredibly heavy, philosophical, physics-bending lecture. It completely drops the mic on the nature of reality. And then the vibe in the room changes again.
Yes. Jane comes out of the trance for a quick break. She's exhausted. She actually mentions she saw a photographic size and shape in her mind, but it wasn't clear. Then, when she goes back into the trance, the entity is gone. Or rather, it steps back up to the top of the cone.
And who steps up to the mic?
Our old friend Seth.
And you can literally feel the relief in the session notes. The cold, distant, high-pitched voice is gone. Seth pops back in, and he's described as forthright, strong, emphatic, and humorous.
It's like the sun coming out from behind a very dense cloud. He immediately cracks a joke to break the tension.
He wishes Rupert, again, that's his multidimensional name for Jane, a happy birthday. She turned 39 that day.
And Seth says, I give Rupert my heartiest wishes for his birthday, though he is far older than his tender 39 years.
Classic Seth shade. Just calling her ancient on a soul level. Happy birthday, Grandma.
It's definitely a term of endearment in his book. It acknowledges her ancient soul, but he also addresses the elephant in the room, the previous speaker.
He calls the entity the senior partner, right?
He implies it, yes. He calls himself the junior partner later on in the dialogue. He explains that he stepped back to let the pure info come through without his personal distortions getting in the way.
He says, the intimacy and personal characteristics by which you know me, at times they will simply be dispensed with, so that a clearer flow of information can be given.
Which shows a great deal of humility, or at least a highly functional understanding of his specific role. He knows his personality is a guise that makes him relatable to humans, but he also knows that sometimes it gets in the way of the raw data. He knows exactly when to get out of the way.
But because he is so relatable, Rob, Jane's husband, takes this opportunity to ask a question that has apparently been bugging him for 3 years. And this is where we finally get to the dog fragment.
Yes. This is a very curious, kind of funny exchange. And again, it perfectly shows the difference between the entity and Seth. The entity talks about multiversal coordinates. Seth talks about dogs.
Rob asks about a dog fragment that was mentioned years ago. Basically, he's asking if Seth and his non-physical crew ever inhabit animals here on Earth.
And Seth confirms it. He says, we do at times visit you, your system, by sending projections of ourselves in such innocent manners.
So that stray dog making intense eye contact with you on the street might actually be a multi-dimensional entity just checking in.
Seth clarifies a very important distinction, though. He says he didn't control the dog. It wasn't a possession scenario. He says the dog consciousness was its own. He was simply aware of it.
It's like a ride-along. He's just the passenger in the dog's car looking out the window.
Exactly. It's a low-stakes way to observe the physical system without taking on the incredibly heavy lifting of being a full human personality with a job and taxes.
He mentions that the specific dog fragment Rob asked about has left the system entirely now, which is a nice metaphysical way of saying all dogs go to heaven, or at least back to the source energy.
It reinforces the idea that consciousness is incredibly fluid. It can flow into a human, a plant, a dog, or it can deliver a high-level lecture on quantum physics. It's all the exact same vitality expressing itself through different coordinates.
So the session wraps up. Seth says his goodnights. Jane wakes up from the trance, but she's left with this lingering, overwhelming feeling from the cone effect.
This is a really poignant moment to end on. Jane tries to describe what she felt physically and emotionally while the entity was speaking through her. She felt energetic lines reaching from her head all the way up to the absolute peak of that cone.
And she got a final message, right? A phrase that basically summed up the entire existence of that high-level entity.
She received the words, "Our existence is joy."
Our existence is joy. That sounds lovely. But Jane was actually frustrated by it.
She was. She felt a profound struggle. She said it felt like the entity was trying to explain incredibly complex, vast concept states of being that we simply don't have words for in English. But her brain, acting as the biological translator, could only boil all of that massive data down to one single word: joy.
It's like trying to download a massive 4K movie onto an old floppy disk. You're going to lose almost all of the data.
Precisely. The joy she felt wasn't just human happiness or having a good day. It was the literal frequency, the vibration of that higher existence. It was the closest approximate translation her limited human mind could offer. It powerfully suggests that the fundamental nature of reality, when you strip away the camouflage, the stress, the physical limitations, is actually a state of ecstatic, pure being.
That is a hell of a place to land.
It really is. It connects everything we've talked about, the physics, the consciousness, the poor photograph. If the photo is bad, it's because a static image can never capture the dynamic joy of the real subject.
It really highlights the challenge of this whole deep dive into the unknown. We are constantly trying to understand the infinite with finite, squishy brains. But hey, at least we have Seth and a couple of beers to help us get through it.
Indeed. It's a group effort.
So let's quickly recap this journey for you. We started with 2.5 beers, literally canceling a multi-dimensional seance.
A very human, very grounded beginning to a highly supernatural event.
We moved to a high-pitched entity forming a cone of consciousness. We got a hard prediction that physics will prove the existence of the soul by 2028, so tick-tock on that, by the way.
Keep your eyes closely on the science journals over the next few years.
We learned about African and Mexican plants that unlock pre-birth memories, which was instantly validated by a newspaper article that Jane hadn't even read yet.
A striking synchronicity that heavily suggests information is completely non-local.
We learned that the universe is just a bad 2D photo of a much cooler reality, and we found out that Seth sometimes hangs out as a dog just to see what's up.
A fairly comprehensive, mind-bending tour of the Seth cosmology.
It's a lot to take in. But if there is one takeaway for you today, for me, it's definitely that photograph analogy. It just sticks with you.
I completely agree. It forces you to pause and question what is actually real and what is just a temporary representation.
Before we sign off, we have to give credit where credit is absolute due. This material comes directly from the Seth Material, specifically the Early Sessions Book 8.
Published by the New Awareness Network. It is a vast, incredible body of work. We've only scratched the surface of one single session today out of hundreds available.
If this melted your brain in a good way, you really should go straight to the source. Don't just take our word for it. We are just giving you the cliff notes here. You can find the books and a ton of more info at sethcenter.com/the early sessions.
Absolutely. Studying the original material yourself offers a depth that a conversational summary simply cannot capture. We quoted less than 5% of the actual session here. The rest is waiting for you.
And just a mandatory reminder, this podcast is distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes. We are just here to share the weirdness with you.
And the wisdom.
So here is my final thought for you to chew on as you go about your week. If this physical life, this world, your body, your stress is just a poor photograph, a dim, static image of who you really are,
then what does the real you look like completely outside the frame?
think about that. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. We'll see you at the next coordinate.